of God's creation, elements with technology. One of the elements is metallurgy, in other words, production and purification of metallurgy, point for technology. The existence of metals means whereby human beings can melt and shape these metals are therefore essential to it. The first of these means is fire. It is thanks to fire that man is able to melt metals. Metals are the only natural conductor of electricity. Industry is the result of the existence of fire. Michael Denton says the following on this subject. Our ability to handle fire is no trivial ability because of technological advance. Through fire came metallurgy and metal tools and eventually chemistry. Fire begins with the ignition of combustible objects. It is the carbon contained as an object. When carbon and oxygen react, they release large which we as flame. However, there is an interesting point here. Some 20% of the Earth's oxygen. Carbon is found in all living things, including our bodies. In other words, the material side by side over the world. So why is it that they do not immediately react together? Why do our and all other organisms not burst into flame? Lies in the astonishing properties of fire. The chemical properties of oxygen and carbon have been carefully arranged together in fire at high temperatures. For that reason, a high temperature is essential. Someone by rubbing sticks, raising the temperature by means of friction. In striking a match, you have to heat it in a by rubbing the head surface. If carbon and oxygen had a rather high tendency to react together, it would suddenly catch fire when the air temperature went up. That is a phenomenon. For example, this plant living in the desert could suddenly burst into flames like a tinderbox when the air temperature reached its highest level in the middle of the day. That, of course, would make it difficult to survive life on Earth at all. If oxygen and carbon required greater heat to react actually do, then it would be unable fire at all. Fire would be a mythical form of energy which only emerged when in short, the properties of oxygen and carbon have been created in such sensitive balances that they are in the best possible form used and kept under control. What human beings call the discovery of fire is actually being placed at the service of mankind by God. God draws attention to this fact in the Quran. that fire has created. He who produces fire for you to light your fires. The earth we live on is a perfect environment for making fire. And this specially created environment is the technology we possess today. Denton also refers to mental factors in the use of fire. The use of fire is of course dependent on additional factors. Availability of wood, for example, and relatively dry. Unless these additional factors were also favorable, then despite all the physical and mental advantages that makes us human, and despite the fitness of the earth as an abode for carbon-based life, fire, metallurgy, chemistry, nor any scientific progress would have been. Indeed, human beings' physical structure, in other words, their hands, arms, ability to move, and senses, are ideally suited to being able to use fire. God has created the human body with a perfection allowing it to meet all its needs. He has also given human beings a brain, and thus the intelligence and skill with which to use fire. For instance, we could have come into a world without arms. It would have been impossible for us to make fire and shape metals, and to develop technology. Or our lower, and we could understand and shape the world around us. In that event, we could not even have described our technological needs. Yet, God has given us intellect with which to think, 5 marvelous senses with which to perceive the world, and a body with needs in the balance of life. It is thanks to these that we are able to take advantage of His blessings, found civilizations, and develop technology. Of these blessings in a verse from the Quran. Tried to number God's blessings. God is ever forgiving. As well as the fact that fire can be made and kept under control in the world, it also has a feature which supports metallurgy. All the metals melt and become liquid, a feature which fire is capable of. For instance, a temperature of 1,540 degrees is necessary to melt iron, and that can only be achieved with powerful fire. Were even higher temperatures to be needed to melt iron, no fuel in the world, for which reason metallurgy would again be impossible. In that case, of course, there could be no technological progress. Civilizations could not be established. After briefly summarizing scientific development, Denton comment. The journey evidence increasingly suggests that the end was that we started to an end foreseen, and that it was not in the least a matter of contingency, We have been drawn along a predetermined path from the discovery to the birth of science, revelation of our centrality in the order of nature. Expressed by Professor of Biochemistry Michael Denton in Scientology, is the truth of the Quran by every believer. God created the world for human life, placed on earth in service of mankind, and enriched it with a variety of blessings, as God reveals in the verses of the Quran. God is He who created the heavens and the earth, and sends water from the sky, and by it fruits as per you. Has made the ships subservient to you to run upon the sea, and He has made rivers subservient to you, and made the sun subservient, holding steady to their courses, the night and days subservient. You have asked Him for God's blessings. Man is indeed wrongdoing, ungrateful.